We have located a map that is no longer here, but we have found a photo of it, and I'm going to show it to the world today. We are given a mainstream narrative, force-fed a narrative from day one, and on average, given more money for the rest of our lives if you continue through this indoctrination program, this system, longer than everybody else, and call it college. We are told these narratives for decades, molding our minds to believe that cathedrals, such as the Hereford Cathedral, was completed in the year 1250, 774 years ago, where we have shown that the mainstream narrative tells us that basically nobody was even here, telling us that the population of nobody was so much more advanced than billions of people that we have today, while at the same time telling us that we are evolving and advancing. A population of basically nobody, knocking out palaces with zero training programs, no lights, no power tools, nothing. And then these palaces are here before us today, looking better than ever, looking better than anything we construct today. Go inside one of them, and you will feel its presence, that they are much more than we are told. We are given a narrative that holds keys that we have found right here on this channel. We have exposed these patterns to the whole world. We have shown that these narratives all over the world are created by the same source. These keys are given to us, and in my opinion, they have always been here, where they were just waiting to see who could find them. I think this is a game, and lucky for us, it's a game that we are very good at. When we dig deeper into this Hereford Cathedral, and we find that its origins held an even earlier church, where the new church had a very short life, of course, for it was plundered and burned down in 1056. It was not, however, destroyed until its custodians had offered vigorous resistance. So we get the fire nod, and now we know that it's time to go deeper and show that this cathedral was built by an extremely advanced civilization, one that we are not being told about, one that constructed these incredible structures all over the world, a population that was much bigger than what we have today, a population that didn't ride around on donkeys. They fully understood how to construct a palace that lasts forever. After hitting the chisel with a hammer all day long, they did not go over to their horse parking spot, where the horse was just standing all day long. They did not ride their horse home and sleep in a wooden shed. This extremely advanced group of people, this group is being hidden from us. And the proof is all over the world. And the coolest part about this research, in my opinion, is that you can go inside these palaces today. And they're in almost every single city in the world. Hereford Castle, check the inside out. Look at those wooden plank benches compared to the incredible construction of the palace itself. Look at the ceilings. The craziest part about this is that there was never a bad construction company in the 1250s, according to the mainstream narrative. Not a single flaw in any country. This fact alone should have alarms going off in everybody's head, if they haven't been going off already. And if they're not going off, I'm gonna fix that right now. A place of worship has existed on the exact same site of this present building since the 700s or earlier. Another narrative where there are multiple buildings on the same site. And we have all the documents backing this statement up. No. This cathedral has the largest library of chained books in the world, where this gets very interesting. This palace is home to the Mappa Mundi, which is its most famous treasure. A map from the old world, in my opinion. We are told this is from over 700 years ago. A map of the old world with Jerusalem at its center. Are we ready to go even deeper? A larger Mappa Mundi, the Ebstorf map, was destroyed by Allied bombings in 1943, though photographs of it survived. Now, we can all see how these operations worked. We understand at this point what wars were most likely used for. We are beginning to understand the entire operation at this point. And through hours and hours of clues, repetition from the narrative, a massive amount of clear lies, there are less and less sitting at the other side of the table. There are thousands of us right now for a reason. Now, let's take a look at this map. Let's pretend that this is a true depiction of where we live. Bombing the other one in 1946, obviously deliberately destroying it. We can see Jerusalem is right here in the center, with Jesus on the cross. You have mermaids down here, and a clear depiction of a griffin, which we know is linked to Tartaria. All of this showing me that there is so much more to our true history than what we are being told in these classrooms. This place that we live is not at all what we are told. On the right-hand side, you have people with faces on their chest. And right above Jesus, you have the Tower of Babel. Now, normally when something is written down, I have a very hard time believing it to be real. But the fact that they bombed the other one definitely shows me that there's something about this map that is very important to us. Let's take a look at the one that they bombed. This is where they tell us that in 1843, they found this map in a convent in northern Germany. It was 12 feet by 12 feet. Again, all centered around Jerusalem. And remember that they tell us a very interesting detail, that they found this map in 1843, where exactly 100 years later, on the dot, in 1943, they bombed it and destroyed it during the Allied bombings. All of this happening during our current civilization, wiping out possibly the true history, possibly the true map. If this place that we live is really centered around Jerusalem, and in 1946 the narrative changed, bombing this map and possibly other things inside that building that would have given a lot of stuff away to us, which was of course also in northern Germany, where you can begin to put the pieces together. And I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna try and keep this as friendly as I can. Reminder, I am always on Rumble as well. Just follow me over there so you always have it. But you can see what this bombing was, in my opinion, all about. 1946, Germany. The map is gone. This man, a German aerospace engineer and space architect, member of the party that I'm not going to say, so we can keep going. He was the leading figure in development of rocket technology in, you guessed it, where he also worked with a guy named Walt. And you can see his last name right here, which popularized the idea of space travel. We all need to understand at this point that there was zero space talk before this. This space talk is all brand new and all a part of this current timeline that we are all in, and a part of this narrative that we are force-fed. So again, 1943 bombed the map where Jerusalem is in the center. 1944, the V2 became the first artificial object to travel into space just 1 year after removing this old world map. The following year, in 1945, this man was secretly moved to the United States, all a part of an operation that I'll put an arrow to right here. And just 12 years later, all a part of this timeline that we're in, this was created. An operation to remove our history, to remove a map and give us this new one. We have found evidence, in my opinion, that it is very clear that within this game that we are all a part of, we are not given the true map to this game, which we have shown a few times now. Is it possible that Jerusalem is the true center of our map and has changed hands not as long ago as we are all told? The map is based on earlier maps, including the Psalter world map, which we are told yet again that Jerusalem is the center of the map. This one being held in the British Library, which was drawn around 1260, but we have no idea who drew it. Where we know all about the year 1079. We know all about the year 794. Where some character was beheaded, where Offa had supposedly consented to give his daughter to Ethelbert in marriage. Why he changed his mind and deprived him of his head, historians do not know. Now, I show this because it's entertaining to me that the narrative gives us these detailed stories from the year 794, but then leave out the most important details of a groundbreaking map, or can't tell us who built the buildings in 1900, like we've shown in episode 33, when we just emailed them and they couldn't tell us. Going back to this map that was bombed in 1946, I'm going to zoom in on it and show you all that there were no huts. There were no plastic siding houses. Every single depiction is of a palace. Palace after palace after palace across the entire map. And there are a few that remain today. And these are the buildings that we are discussing on this channel. The ones that remain. But we can clearly see that there were so many more that have been removed from our view. I'll scroll around a little so you can all get a good look at this map that is gone now. And then I'm going to show you what I believe is a depiction of the exit to our current map, the one that is being hidden from us. Down here at the bottom left, there is a massive opening where I think that this is definitely part of the reason for trapping our minds and telling us that we are trapped on a ball, flying through space, where, remember, this is a brand new idea, and we all know whose idea it was. We have shown that in this episode. And now there is nowhere to go, where if these maps that have been destroyed are true, then there would be openings, possibly leading to more land, which coincides with this treaty that was introduced in 1959, the exact years that we are talking about here. Destroying this map, 1945, an operation to bring over Walt's friend to the USA. In 1958, we get this group, and 1 year later, in 1959, we get this treaty. Now, this treaty is the only thing in the world that all of these countries can agree on, which should show you that there is something very interesting about it. So just remember that while there are things going on in the world, countries that we are told that they don't like each other, they still agree on something. And this is something that hides a massive truth from all of us.
Tonight is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans? Yes, there is.
This treaty covers the area south of the 60th degree south latitude, which means that you just can't get on a boat and set sail and go to Antarctica and see these openings on this map where they tell us that all Antarctica-bound expeditions must be authorized by the operator's own country or the vessel's flag state, where heavy fines can result from non-authorized visits to Antarctica. Would you like to see the openings in our map? A massive operation shut this down in the mid-1900s, and now we have further evidence of this. Again, I do believe that all of this information is here for us to find it. I think this is all available to us. As long as this is something that we want to know. It's all very clear. The more truth that you know, it all makes more and more sense. And it all lines up. Exactly how the truth always does. While a lie is all over the place. I've said this before, but I do think it's possible that they are waiting to see who can find this information. They've left it out there for those that look. Now, the word medieval, in my eyes, is another word for the old world. They explain the narrative away by simply calling it medieval. So let's remember this going forward. Right on their website, the Hereford Cathedral tells us that the medieval cathedral was not monastic. They even tell us that the map that they hold inside this place, the map that we discussed today, is one of the world's unique medieval treasures. Our timeline starts around 1700 and then spikes in the 1800s with massive operations going on in the 1800s. All in my opinion, of course, based on everything that we have seen. But this is why I always check the 1800s for major destruction projects of these incredible palaces. Oh, wait, did I say destruction? I meant restoration. When you go to the mid-1800s yet again, we have the exact same narrative here. 1841 to 1863, major restoration of the cathedral. A cathedral that did not need our help. In fact, we weren't even given the power tool until 1895. So what major renovations could our horse and wagon friends have truly done to this palace? Do you think it's possible that they removed things that did not fit into our mainstream timeline? Before we go into the bonus, I'm going to show you this, how I don't believe that the Mappa Mundi has always been here at this location. I believe that it was put here when we are told the only complete world map of its kind to have survived, a fascinating pictorial encyclopedia of the medieval world, where it may have been, it might have been, maybe, but the mainstream narrative is of course iffy on that. It might have been made for the Hereford Cathedral and has been here for most of its life. Most of its life. Not all of its life? Where was it before? Who really made this map? Why was the other one bombed? This is extremely interesting stuff, especially when this is all on their website. And in my opinion, an admission that this was not theirs. This was not there in that palace for its whole life. They even call it medieval, and they have now taken possession of it. Oh, in 1786, the west tower of the cathedral just collapses overnight on Easter Monday. Just random, of course. Do we think that that was random? You tell me. Clearly a palace from the old world. And just for fun, let's show the repeating names. Robert of Lorraine, Robert de Botton, 4 more Roberts buried here. And then we have 2 Thomases with 3 more Thomases buried there. And we can't leave out a couple Hughes thrown in back to back. Now for the bonus. Located at 651 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. Opening in 1877. We have the Dr. Ray V. Pierce Palace Hotel, where this gets wild. We've talked about energy here on this channel, how these buildings hold energy, but this gets deep. The place was half hotel, half hospital, where the baths and gymnasiums on the campus were known nationwide for their healing and restorative powers. A healing hotel. Where is this why a lot of the old world buildings have been destroyed? Because they held healing powers for all of us. Where 2 presidents were frequent visitors. Pierce's Palace Hotel was open only 4 years before it burned down in 1881. And are we right or what? Is this not a nod? I'm not joking. Every time I see this narrative, I am more and more surprised. For one, that we never noticed this before. And for 2, that they really put this in the narrative over and over and over, all over the world. And we know here that that building was much older than just 4 years. And you can see what I'm talking about with all of these fires when we just flip over to the St. Peter's Cathedral Basilica in London, Ontario, and see that they just throw this into the narrative as a nod to their group for future generations, in my opinion, to recognize which buildings are from the previous civilization, where it says that there were multiple churches on this location. The first one was destroyed in the London Fire, 1845, and a larger frame church was built. But this church also burned down in 1850, 5 years later. And we have a whole series about this nod called the Fire Games. It's all in a playlist. So now let's get back to this Pierce's Hotel. After that fire that we just showed, in 1881, Pierce opened his Invalids Hotel and Surgical Institute on the 600 block of Main Street, which survived until 1941, where things begin to get interesting. The beginning of the end for the Pierce's Invalids Hotel and Surgical Institute likely came to an end in 1939 when the Federal Trade Commission included this cease and desist order in a stipulation. They were basically no longer allowed to call themselves doctors or medical men. They were no longer able to give medical advice. Not being able to call themselves doctors or call their advice medical advice must have been a lethal blow a little over a year later, where in my opinion, this was the end of this old world medicine, old world healing powers coming to an end when on August 1st, 1941, the Invalids Hotel and Surgical Institute discontinued operations, and Pierce, the one that had this knowledge of old world healings, passes away. And 2 years after that, 1944, Kane announced that they would be destroying all of the Pierce's estate's glass work. Here we are in Rome, Italy. This was constructed in 1317 and took 600 years to build. Could you imagine? That would be more believable than what I'm about to tell you. And what I'm about to tell you is the mainstream narrative. This is actually Richmond, Virginia. It's named the Cathedral of Sacred Heart, and it was constructed in 2 years. Just looking at this place, I wish we could still build like this. I would love to see more of these built today. Instead, we have 0 of them being built today. Not one. Where's the technology gone? So they say the construction began in 1903, and they put the finishing touches on this 144-foot high cathedral in 1905, built with a granite foundation, limestone walls, and a copper dome that stretches 118 feet. The construction was perfect to the nearest inch. The cathedral is 1,728 inches wide and 1,728 inches tall. It's exact. Absolutely incredible stuff. And I'm so glad we are given the name of this fireproof tile designer, Mr. Raphael. I'm glad we won't be having any fires in this building, thanks to this guy. If we take a look inside, this is just your normal, standard 1900s building. It was simple construction, and I'm shocked it took them so long to build in 1903. What was the holdup? Was their horse not up for a granite pole that day? 2 years to construct this. What a joke. Now here they were clearly destroying the original. It was even better than what we see today, if you can imagine that. In the beginning, it had marble altar rails, but those were destroyed because who needs marble altar rails? If my house came with marble rails, you know I'd be marching over to the model home that very day. And if they didn't get it out of my house, I would be forced to get my hammer out. It's just unacceptable. So far, this story is insane. 2 years to construct this place in 1903, before any sort of shipping trucks were available. A nice in-depth story about how these huge granite blocks were transported here would be really helpful, but no. We are not told that information, of course. And they are back to saying that architects are also builders, which they are not. Here we are told Joseph Maguire is the guy who draws this place up on a piece of paper. And he did such a great job drawing it on that paper that it just appeared here in 1905. Something had to have happened in 1904 and 1903 though, right? How many men were hired to do this job? Or was it just Mr. Maguire alone building this himself? Or did he have a few sons to help him out? We all know how much they love to tell us about the sons at this point, because as long as you have sons, you're gonna get the job done. And we all know it'll only take a few short months. And here I'm looking at this place on Google Earth. And normally when you find one of these incredible structures, you will find others on the block, or at least things that don't belong. This is very important to remember in this research. If one thing survives from the old world, there normally will be other hidden gems that made it through as well. And just wait to see how right this theory is. Get ready to have your mind blown today. But first, here we have this pillar, and our current civilization has no idea what to do with it. So what do? What should we do? Well, we should dress it up and disguise it, of course, with the ugliest parking sign you've ever seen in your entire life. This is a disgrace, honestly. This is just as good as graffiti. These buildings deserve much more respect than this. Come on, Virginia, you're better than this. Can we zoom in on this picture a little? Is there something behind this yellow parking thing? I'm 100% sure it doesn't say, park over here or you're gonna get a boot on your car. Okay, so I wasn't wrong. Let's look literally right across the street. And what do we have here? The Da Vinci Center. Okay, let's have some fun. What is happening here? The stone on this thing looks so old and incredible. Multiple arches and a suspect window that clearly proves that we have action and something going on underground. I would love to go inside this building and see what they have going on. I would not be shocked at all if there are tunnels. This building is now a part of Virginia Commonwealth University. So whenever you try to find any information on it, it just comes up with enroll here and all this nonsense. Great way to hide the history of a building. Turn it into a college. Let's continue down the block and see if this block is giving us anything else. Monroe Park giving us a nice aerial star symbol. Very interesting. And what do we have here? We have another building that is from the old world, of course. Grace and Holy Trinity Church. So another church on the same block. How many churches do these people need in 1900? Okay, so this place is founded in 1858. Notice they say founded. This was not constructed, and they admit it right here. It was found. So how many people even lived in this town in 1858? 38,000 people in Richmond, with like 12,000 that were slaves. So they weren't going to church. So 26,000 people needed these massive structures? Does this make sense? Remember, there were also children a part of this population. So who constructed this place? And I'm just gonna add in the next structure right now, so we can prove this point beyond a doubt. Right next door, from this church, we have the Altria Theater, holding 3,565 people, while also having an 18,000 square foot ballroom. This one was also built in just 2 years. Of course it was. It also holds a basement, where the Richmond Police Department got to go set up shop. There's enough room down there for office space, classrooms, a gymnasium, and a shooting range. That's it? No, that's not it, of course. They also had a swimming pool. This was simple construction in 2 years in the early 1900s. Very easy. Which construction company was in charge of building these buildings on the same exact block that completely destroy our current day construction? How can this be possible? Anyone going to see Baby Shark live should have a great time. I wonder how many of them know that they are about to go into an old world building. Let's even take a look at this thing. Just going straight up and spiraling for about 75 feet in the air. Something that Bobby can go work on over on the side for a couple weeks with his special chisel. Then lift that thing up on the scaffolding. Get some glue on it and it'll be over there forever. Easy. Simple construction 100 years ago. This is what we are told. This is the world we are in. We are being lied to at every turn, in my opinion. And given these crazy stories, they are hiding the truth about these buildings and giving us these crazy stories that don't make any sense. And then don't explain why we never build anything close to this ever again. And especially not in just 2 years, but they did it all the time back then. It was no problem at all. 2 years, done. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed today's... Wait, no. There's more? There's more. The Jefferson Hotel, right down the street. Construction began in 1892. It took 25 years to build. Could you imagine? Of course not. This thing only took 3 years to build. Finished right up in 1895 because they had to meet their deadline. 6 years later, in 1901, the entire interior was destroyed by fire. The restoration process took 6 years and reopened in 1907. So let me get this straight. It took double the time to restore it than it did to build the entire thing. And anyone who has watched my previous episodes will know about the fires, proving that these are old world buildings. I'm just glad that there was only one fire this time. I don't think I could handle the second fire. Oh no. What is this? In 1944, they tried to destroy it again? Another fire broke out in 1944 and killed 6 people. Could you imagine what was inside that place that they didn't want us to see? Is this how we build hotels today? Could we possibly construct any of these buildings that we've seen today? Is it possible? No, it isn't. And not in 2-3 years. What is going on with this college of VCU? Did they find these buildings and repurpose them? In my opinion, I would say yes. And are they the only college that's done this? We will get into that in the future episodes. There is much more to discover. Wait, are we still not done with this block at VCU? Right next door from the hotel, we have this? Anyone want to let me know what this place is? Located on 19 West Franklin Street, Richmond, Virginia? No name, no nothing. It's just sitting here, not being used. People walking right past like it's nothing. Completely blind to what is sitting right in front of them. And for fun to rub it in, of course they have a Founders Hall building where the people that found all these buildings lived. Yep, that one right there, that's ours. I don't know, guys. What should we name this building that we found? Well, we found it, so let's name it Founders Hall. Perfect. Where we are told that we live is much, much different than where we actually are. This is not normal, and it is very clear at this point. Remember, we are unsure which building will be next to go up in flames. It's so repetitive, and we need to keep making this known so that we all wake up and see them when we walk past them. They are the hidden key to the past civilizations, in my opinion. And these buildings are being destroyed to hide our true history. A fire is a great way to say it was an accident. It's one way to destroy a building without putting blame on someone. Who do we get mad at if a guy isn't hitting it with a wrecking ball? Fires ruin the old world without a planned demolition. And don't forget that the owner surely gets their money back through insurance claims instead of paying for a demolition process. And I don't feel like ending this episode yet. The Hungarian Parliament building. Construction for this massive project began in 1885. A 4-story, 315-foot high, 691-room palace with 10 courtyards, 29 staircases. This is your everyday building in 1885, of course. Now, the incredible thing about this place is that it's not just about one building. The entire block is filled with buildings that do not belong to our timeline. We have the Memorial of National Cohesion, the Ministry of Agriculture, and of course, a chocolate museum. They should have added a few more pillars to the chocolate museum. How embarrassing. I'm not sure how these people could go to work in such a horrible looking building. The chocolate museum deserves more. What a joke. And here we have hundreds of people just walking past the chocolate museum, not understanding what they're walking next to at all. Could you imagine we built a chocolate museum like this today? I think people would come from all over the world to see the construction process. All right, back to this Parliament building. It's massive. They say that 100,000 people were involved in its construction. They used 40 million bricks and 500,000 precious stones, and 88 pounds of gold were used. Remember, as long as they say they had the money and the manpower, they could be your average Joe or prisoner, like we've shown before. Doesn't matter who it is. They will bring the architect's drawing to life in no time, every time. They will be fully trusted with the 88 pounds of gold, and any one of those 100,000 people could get the job done. Just call them over here, pick it out of a hat. The project will be completed perfectly. 8 years after the construction began, it was done. In 1904, of course. This sentence right here proves to me that this building doesn't belong to our timeline. Today, the government uses only a small portion of the building. Of course they do. They found and repurposed this building, in my opinion. They don't need the whole thing, because it wasn't built for this purpose. Whoever built this building needed the whole thing. They needed all 691 rooms. They needed all the courtyards. And they needed the chocolate factory building as well. The whole area was of importance. It wasn't just barely used. And we all fully understand this now. The trick is done. We did not construct this building in 8 years in the 1800s, along with the rest of the town. And we only need a small portion of it today. Something incredible happened here in this area. And I'm just gonna take you guys all around this area on Google Earth here for a little bit and show you that this used to be an incredible empire, in my opinion. The buildings are all so perfectly laid out. The buildings are all repurposed and turned into random things. This one is the Americana Public Library. And it just so happens to be right next to all of this. This was not built to be a library. Who builds a random library like this? Do any of our towns have any plans to draw up one of these and get the job done in a couple years? No. Are we even close to constructing anything like this? No, we're not. We couldn't build this if we had 10 million people and unlimited funds, in my opinion. It's not about the money, and it's not about the amount of people. It's about the technology. And I want to make this very clear. You have to understand how to construct something like this. Something that will last forever, unless it is demolished or lit on fire, which we've seen many times. And it's not just this library. It's the chocolate store. It's the Parliament building. It's the entire city of Budapest. This is incredible stuff. Just incredible stuff. I'm glad we covered that. There's so much in this city. Don't be shocked if we come back and revisit this city with further detail and even more buildings in the near future. The second oldest continuously operating Roman Catholic parish in the United States of America, which is weird because we're told that we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. Oh, and it was built in just 1 year. Today, we visit the Basilica of St. Anne in Detroit. And let's have some fun today. The mainstream narrative had the hardest time explaining this building. It is much older than we are told. And I want to make that clear right from the start. On the actual website for the Basilica, they couldn't just say that it was simply constructed 300 years ago, because that wouldn't make any sense in the United States timeline. So, here we go, and I quote, "On July 24th, 1701, 25 canoes glided to a stop at the foot of a high bluff." Before I continue, I want to make this clear. 1701 may have been the original construction date of this building, and it may have been older than that. And this is not including updates to the building and additions. And they needed to explain it away with a canoe gliding nonsense story. And I say this because if we go down in the story a little, it says that they had to build a chapel. We couldn't even get a paragraph into this, and we get the nod. Do we all see it now? Is this a coincidence anymore? Or did we find the key? I believe that we have cracked their code. to understanding their symbolism of these buildings. Here we go, and I quote, "The earliest records were destroyed in a fire, but a new registry has been maintained since 1704. So we definitely have something incredible going on here in this narrative. Let's go to the second paragraph, where they tell us that this is the 8th structure on this site. They tell us that the oldest stained glass in Detroit is found in the current basilica. Well, of course it is. This thing is hundreds of years old. At this point, these narratives are extremely sketchy. We have a fire story all over the world. Not every house on the block goes up in flames, but every single one of these old world buildings pretty much do. You have to ask, is that mathematically possible? No, it isn't. The fire is the symbolism, the hidden key to the past civilization. Now here, as I visit this building, it was under construction. If you saw episode 33, you will understand why I don't think that these buildings need to be fully restored, and that they may be removing something from the building. I have shown comparisons between the old world and the new world construction on the same building many times before. Our restoration completely ruins the building nearly every time. It doesn't help it. So here they have given us a 5-phase construction process that's going on right now. I tried to go inside the basilica and the man would not let me in, which I thought was very interesting. Now, right outside, I couldn't believe my eyes. I looked down and our ridiculous construction is crumbling away, of course, and exposing the ancient hidden brick roads. And what is this? Do we have a play on words? Of course we do. An admission that this building is older than 300 years old. When they tell us that it has gone through many changes in its 300 plus years. 300 plus years? Yeah, plus 1,000 years. There hasn't been any changes to this building. We currently do not construct things that last forever. If we made a change to this basilica, that changed part would have fallen apart by now. When we read the narrative, look very closely which words are being used. For whatever reason, they cannot lie to us. They have to tell us in one way or another. And right here, they do exactly that. The Basilica of St. Anda, Detroit, was founded in 1701. It was founded. I'm gonna get very technical right now and prove that there is most likely more building underground. And this entire basilica and every other one that is said to be founded may have been underground. The legal definition for the word founded is based upon, arising from, growing out of, or resting upon. Now, it does not say constructed. It does not say built. This is a legal term. The word arise, meaning emerge. The term growing out of or resting upon. These are all legal examples of the word founded. So in legal terms, this building was doing either one of the three in 1701. Emerging from the dirt, growing out of the dirt, or just resting there. Legally, this building was not built or constructed in 1701. It was founded. Our houses are not founded. Our houses were constructed. I will be referring back to this episode in the future when we find another founded building. The fires swept through the settlement. And not only did it supposedly wipe out the church, but also several other buildings. How many buildings did they build in 2 years from 1701 to 1703? What is going on here? Just showing up here in a canoe. And 2 years later, they just constructed an entire town? I mean, that isn't even close to logical thinking. If this was true, then we have devolved horribly. I would love to just show up in a canoe to an empty piece of land with no known construction training, with a party of 50 people, 50 soldiers and 2 priests, and construct the whole town in 2 years. Where the heck did this material come from? You can't tell me they got the stone there by train. The first train in Michigan didn't come around for another 132 years. The first one in Detroit was in 1838, so 137 years in this location. Did they canoe the stone there from a mysterious land? How fast were these canoes? Basically, they had to knock out a whole town in 2 years. They needed a lot of material. And how many of these 50 soldiers were master builders with years of construction training? I'm guessing 0, because I don't believe that any of this story is true at all. It is a bunch of nonsense that doesn't make a single logical point. And they give us a fire story. Just look at the front of this basilica. This was constructed in a single year. Yeah, right. Let's go even deeper. Apparently, this church has a sister church, Our Lady of the Assumption in Windsor, Canada, which is about 5,000 feet away. And just as we talked about, how the one in Detroit is the oldest one in Michigan, here we have the oldest continuous parish in all of Canada, located 5,000 feet away from each other. In my opinion, these were built together, and for a very important meaning. And according to the narrative, This one needed to be built and rebuilt 4 times before they figured it out. So they tell us, for this one, they got some land in 1782. 3 to 4 years later, in the 1700s, this thing is done. 3 years to construct something that lasts forever in the 1700s? This is insane. So a totally separate group sets up a camp right around the corner. And what do you know? They are also master builders as well in the 1700s. Give me a break. My crew and I, we went and walked around Detroit even more to see what else was going on. We have the Cathedral of the Most Blessed Sacrament, which is now closed. Now, right in the middle of Detroit's NBA stadium, NFL stadium, and MLB stadium, and more impressive than all 3 combined, we have this, the St. John's Church. And in 1859, it was just too small, of course. So they had to quickly construct this one in 2 years. Simple. Now, remember, Detroit, Michigan is freezing in the winters. They were not able to build anything in the winter months. So knocking this thing out in 2 years is ridiculous. Also, the first one took how long to build? Oh, 1 year? 1858 to 1859? Yeah, why not? Amazing. Clearly, this was here before. And this was the cover-up story. Now, all over Detroit, we have buildings. They have cinder blocks covering the original windows. In my opinion, this is because they most likely had stained glass windows that our civilization has no idea how to fix or maintain. They got rid of them and just put cinder blocks there instead. These windows were perfectly aligned and would have looked incredible. Take a look at this building. Go ahead and share your ideas on this one in the comments below. We have a building underneath this brick. It is clearly hiding something. The original windows barely align with the new brick. So strange. And what is underneath could be even more mind-blowing. Hidden by this brick. I had a lot of fun in Detroit and still can't believe they covered up the brick road with our current road. Totally reinforcing what we were talking about here. Attempting to hide the past civilization, but unable to keep it down fully. The past civilization simply built with perfection and will last forever, waiting for us to discover it. And now that we have open eyes, we can see the hidden brick of the past. And we now understand that there is much, much more below our feet that we just can't see yet.